Yeah, all right, everyone. Welcome to PIM. Mike could not be here today. He's helping out remotely. Are you there, Mike?
Hello, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll try to share this, but Mike will jump in when he can, and he'll also do a presentation later. So this is actually, before we start, we need a minute taker. Anyone willing to take minutes? You don't have to take like detailed minutes, just like what decisions are made and how many people are voting for what when we have to do any voting. Okay, I have to try to. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. I'll try to take notes while you are presenting. So, okay, thank you. That's great. All right, then we can get started. So this is the note well that you should all have seen before, and read it if you haven't. Also pass out the blue sheets here. Okay, so this is our agenda today. Does that look good? Did I miss any requests? I hope not. You have plenty of time today, so I gave everyone a few minutes extra, but we'll see. We'll probably use all the time we have. All right, let's get started then. So first on the agenda is Greg on point to multi-point BFD. Oh wait, sorry. I need to go through the working group status first. Then we will start on the presentations. All right, let's do this. So we have a lot of Yang models. The progress is a little bit slow. I should say people have done a great job on the drafts, but we're a little slow at getting them published. We have 2 drafts now that are in the RFC editors queue. I think they're stuck there just because they're waiting on other Yang model drafts to be finished. There's a lot of references to other Yang drafts, so they will go as a group from the editor to be published. So that's the PIM draft and the IGMP MLD draft. We also have 2 more drafts, MSTP and IGMP MLD snooping. I was trying to get them published. It took some time to get everyone to respond whether there's any IPR and stuff like that. But now I got all the responses I need. There's no IPR or anything. So I'll try to request publishing in a week or 2. Then we have some other drafts. We have DR load balancing. Publication was requested for that. Alvaro RAD reviewed that and had a good amount of comments. So as one of the authors, I will try to address the comments, and I think they're just minor things, but if there's anything bigger, we'll take it to the mailing list so that you all get a chance to see what's going on and if you agree with the changes that are being considered. There's a draft for IPv4 prefix or IPv6 next hop that has been stuck for a while. As one of the authors, that's mainly my fault. Try to get back to that. There's a DR improvement draft. It passed working group last call, but last meeting we agreed that it should have a little bit of text explaining why this is different from the other DR draft that we have been discussing in the working group. So yeah, I suggested some text, and if the authors in the working group are happy with that, we can move on, or we can discuss, of course, what we want to do. But it's more or less ready to be published, or at least go to the ISG. Then we have an explicit tracking draft that we will need to look into again and see what to do about it, whether we want to progress it, whether we want to maybe change the intended status. But at least for now, that's not being worked on. We have a PIM reserved bits draft. We passed working group last call, and I believe Mike is about to request publication for that. There's 2 drafts discussed this meeting: null registered packing and BFD point-to-point use cases. That's all I had for status. One last slide. We haven't talked about this in a little while, but maybe bring it up again now. So we talked a little bit a couple of meetings ago about implementation requirements and how different working groups have different requirements. And we haven't really had any requirements at all in this working group. And yeah, we talked about this a little bit, and at least my feeling is that we are fairly happy about that. What Mike and I thought, though, is that it might be good that at least the chairs ask if there are any implementations. And if people know about implementations, when you finish off the draft and request publication, it might be nice to have a section in there saying something about implementations if you actually are aware of any. So no requirements, but it's maybe nice that we as a group know about what implementation status is if we are aware of it. Does that sound reasonable, or any comments on that? So no formal requirements, just good if we tell each other if you're aware of anything. So basically, what we're aiming for is at least that as chairs that we try to ask about implementations, but also maybe that documents can mention implementations. But we won't go any further up towards any requirements unless people want that. All right, then I think we can start with our first presentation. Let's see. Yeah, I guess right there.
It's about there.
Yeah.
Okay, clicker works? Or?
Yeah, you can use this one here.
Thank you.
Just a moment, I'll bring it into presentation mode here.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so this is update to the draft that we discussed, and during our discussion, the recommendation was to make it more generic. So this is to reflect what we have done. And just to recapture, the proposed solution is to use BFD for multi-point, or referred to as point-to-multipoint BFD, to track, to enable PIN SM routers over shared segment to track status of the router which takes on role as a head end of point-to-multipoint BFD session. Primarily, we see that as the benefit to track the status of DR and possibly BDR. So the mechanics works that the router that we want to track status adds optional TOV. It advertises its locally assigned 32 unsigned integer as its discriminator. The specifics of point-to-multipoint BFD comparing to BFD, classical BFD defined in RFC 5880 is that there is no three-way handshake. So their BFD systems do not exchange their discriminator values, and thus the router that receives BFD control packet cannot demultiplex BFD sessions based on its local discriminator value, which is in the packet placed in a your discriminator field. In point-to-multipoint BFD, BFD session or BFD state machine is changed, and it immediately progresses. Actually, it starts from the up state, from the point of view of the head end. And head end periodically transmits BFD control packets with the your discriminator field of 0. So multi-point tails cannot demultiplex different BFD sessions based on your discriminator field. So thus, we need a mechanism that bootstraps the point-to-multipoint session by transmitting the my discriminator from the head end to tails. And once the tail receives my discriminator, and if it's configured to participate in tracking the status of this PMSM node, then it must start BFD session as a multi-point tail and demultiplex using my discriminator, source IP address, and the multicast distribution tree that it receives on. So what we specified is that we're basically this specification only covers the RFC and BDR improvement draft. That DR must include BFD TLV in its PIM hello message, and the TLV must be included after DR address TLV. And BDR is recommended, so basically recommended is identical to should, to include BFD TLV in PIM hello message, and if to be included, then it must follow after BDR address TLV. So we welcome comments, and we think that we're ready for consideration of the last call.
A couple of quick comments. The document is called something use cases, but in reality, you're specifying something. True?
Well, no.
I mean, not the title of the
document,
but I mean the actual title in the document.
Yeah, the tail in the document might be a little bit
just consider that.
Not that good. You know,
Right.
Lack of creativity at the moment.
Just consider that. And the other is, I haven't read the whole thing, but I just read the introduction, or maybe the abstract, and it says that the enhancement is an optional enhancement.
Yeah.
To PIM. Okay,
Yes.
good. So the draft currently says it updates 7761. So don't put that in there.
Okay. I think you're right. I think that was oversight, and it should not. Yeah, actually.
Sorry, just from the sentence you said, just because it's optional doesn't mean it cannot be an update, right? So I didn't quite get the semantic of what you're trying to.
Okay, so Alvaro Rotana again. It is not completely clear to everyone what updates means. And in general, what most people use it for is for an actual formal update to the updated RFC. So what that usually means is that if I'm updating the PIM specification, I'm actually saying this should be there, with the intent that if I'm implementing the base PIM specification, I have to do this. Again, if this is optional, then it probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, it's clearly optional, and this is an extension. So
Right.
whether
So now, having said that, I said just to go into the story of IETF process, it is not clear. And so there's been some discussion in the IETF list that I'm sure all of you have enjoyed about what this updates really means. There is a new proposal that that a couple of people in the AHG are putting together, that there's probably going to be a draft released next week that actually is going to get rid of updates so that it's actually clear. And so there's going to be a new tag that says, I think the name is something like amends or something like that, where it actually means this is a change. The base specification must use this new thing.
Might be like parent and child
I don't know.
related to distant
No,
relative.
no. So there's 3 new tags. One that's going to say, I think it's called amends, so that the base specification must use this extension.
Oh.
There's another one that is extends for something like this,
Mhm.
so that now you're doing something optional. You're extending the protocol, you're adding something new or whatever. And so it is useful to be able to tie those two together, right? So that if you're doing the basic spec, maybe you want to see what other things are extensions. So you can do that. And then there's a third one, which I think is going to be called something like see also or something like that. So that you're saying, well, this is not an extension, this is not a mandatory thing, but it would be nice if you actually looked at that other RFC
Mhm.
as well. And one of the reasons we're doing that is because those 3 different types of applications were what people were using in some cases when we talk about updates.
Mhm.
And so we ended up with long threads, unnecessary threads and stuff, just discussing what does this really mean. And there are examples of published RFCs that actually use updates in those 3 ways at least, and probably in other ways. So for now, I guess we're saying updates is the formal, you must do this
Mhm.
to whatever the other document is. And soon, and I don't know, hopefully we can get that through community review and everything else. Soon we'll have those other tags ready to go.
Tolles Eckert. And so the only reason right now why you really would say you must do something is if it incurs a backward incompatibility, right?
Yeah, sure. In general, yes. If you're actually changing something that you wouldn't be compatible, or if you're making a change to the base specification that you think is really, really important for everyone to use, then you would do that. Or the other normal case is if you're changing the registries, for example. You define some registries. You're not actually changing the protocol, but you define some registries through IANA. And now you're changing those registries, not assigning a new code point, but now you're saying, instead of using specification required, I now want to use IETF review or whatever. Then there's a change. It's not a change to the protocol, but a change to the document.
I have a couple of comments on the draft. Just one clarification first. This is already a working group document.
Yes.
So the draft name you have there is the old one.
It's,
But
when I was preparing slides. Oops.
yeah. But yeah, if anyone is wondering, it is a working group draft.
Yes.
I have a more important technical comment though. So you were saying on this slide here, right, that that BFD TLV must come after the other.
Yes.
And I would say in general today, we don't have any requirements on ordering for hello options. And I think many implementations just kind of parse all of them first and then afterwards check. So I think it would be better to just say that both must be present or something.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, I'll reword it so that both must be present.
But then I have one more comment though. There are implementations today using BFD, regular point-to-point BFD with PIM for quickly find out that the DR has gone away. So I feel like what is in this draft is useful also independent of the DR improvement draft. So I think, at least my opinion is that it would be good to allow people to use this hello option also, regardless of DR improvement.
To use
basically you
to
might
advertise my discriminator.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing is that this BFD TLV to advertise discriminator is needed only if we use point to multi-point BFD. If someone is using RFC 5880, then or 51 probably because it's a single hop use case, then there is no need to bootstrap. So
yeah, sorry. What I mean is, it can be useful to announce your discriminator even if you're not implementing the PIM-DR improvement draft.
Oh, yes, and that's, I think that we'll probably have this discussion later during the meeting, because I read the other draft and I have a couple questions about it. So how it will work, and because their procedure is a little bit different from the procedure, and then the question is, since there is no explicit advertisement of DR address and VDR address, so if how will be interpreted BFD TLV, I need to maybe discuss it with authors of that other draft.
Yeah, so at least you do, I mean, you always do a DR election with existing PIM sparse mode. So one router, one neighbor is regarded as being the DR.
Yeah, but what will happen, so if there are more than one router requested to become a multi-point head, so and starts and sends its BFD TLV, so we expect that others will monitor it. So basically then, okay, let me think about it.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Any other comments? So, do people have any thoughts about working group last call? At least my feeling is that, yeah, there might be worth thinking a little bit about
Okay, sure.
these details, but do people think it's ready otherwise, or any thoughts on whether it should go to last call shortly? Yeah. So if we work out these details before the next IETF meeting, we could potentially consider a last call before next IETF, unless people think.
I'll update what we agreed on, that change, remove requirement of ordering, but just say must be present.
Yeah.
And then I will think about how it interacts with this another draft.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we'll have some discussion on the mailing list, and also check on the list later if it can go to last call or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next up is Hongji. Let's see if I can find it here. It's this one. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hongji. I am from Ericsson. Now let me introduce some updates about the IGMP MLD proxy YARN model. This is the third version for the presentation. After last IETF meeting, we have involved two more co-authors. Mani is from Cisco and Mahesh is from Juniper. Now we have totally 5 authors covers the 5 different vendors: Ericsson, Water Network, Huawei, Cisco, and Juniper. Draft update 1. We update the constraint to make sure the upstream interface for IGMP MLD proxy should not be configured PIM. In the old version, we have already had this constraint, but it has some limitation. In the current version, we have solved this limitation with the not function in the XPath. Update 2, we have added the feature IGMP proxy to make the implementation more flexible. This is the whole hierarchy for the IGMP proxy. We augment the control plane protocol as the container IGMP proxy. Under the IGMP proxy, it has a list of interfaces. Similarly, we also add the feature MLD proxy. This is the whole hierarchy for the MLD proxy. This is the common scenario for the IGMP proxy. Generally, we all configure the IGMP proxy on the upstream interface 1/1. The other two interfaces are connected to the receivers. This is the configuration data for the IGMP proxy. We set the type of the control plane protocol IGMP proxy, and the interface name is 1/1, and the name field, the enable field is set true. There is still some unsolved comments. Mohammed is the author of the RFC 8114. He thinks that the IGMP proxy module should take account into the IGMP MLD interworking function in RFC 8114. The RFC 8114 provide a solution for the IPv4 multicast service to the IPv4 multicast clients through the IPv6 multicast networks. This new function, it combines the IGMP proxy function and the address synthesizing operations. This is the topology in the RFC 8114. But I think it is not proper to consider it when designing the IGMP proxy YANG model, because I think IGMP MLD interworking function is just the application of the IGMP MLD proxy. What do you think that? Next step, I would like to apply for the workgroup adoption and welcome more comments. Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess I have a comment on the 8114 support. I don't have a strong feeling either way, but I'm not sure how many implementations there are of that. And I guess the YANG model is mostly trying to, what should I say, address the things that that most implementations have implemented, right? Okay. But yeah, I guess we're just talking about the adoption now, so we have time to discuss that further later.
Okay.
So I think, okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, if somebody like Mohammed has opinions about the adoption, if it's inclusive of data or not, I would say, if there's a proposal how it should be done, that makes it clear that if you don't implement that function, there is no problem to express that in the model, and it would otherwise work. I think it could well be in scope, right? Yeah. So just when we're doing the adoption, right, it would be good to have an opinion of whether that could be in scope or if people really don't want it to be in scope.
Yeah, so it would be good to know more, understand better what is involved. So I think we more or less agree. Yeah, I think we agreed last IETF meeting, to do an adoption call. I'm not sure about that, but I think we did that, but we never actually did the adoption call. Okay. Sorry about that. Are people fine with us doing an adoption call on the list this time? So I know not that many people read the YANG model drafts, unfortunately, but can I see how many people have read this draft? Yeah, it's just a couple of people. At least one of them is one of the authors. Yeah, unless people have any strong feelings either way, against or in favor of adoption, I think we'll just do an adoption call on the list and see what people think. We have at least support from 5 different vendors, it seems, so that's pretty good. Yeah. All right, so do an adoption call on the list.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, next is RAM key on null register pattern.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present the draft.
Yeah, I can do it.
So the draft had been presented in multiple IETFs before. In a nutshell, the draft speaks about how to pack null registers in a single message whenever possible. So there are a couple of additions were done before in the Prague IETF, but after that there are no more additions. So we are looking like, is it ready for last group call?
Yeah, any comments? Yeah, so how many people read this draft? It hasn't changed in one IETF. So can I see if you read this draft before the previous IETF or since that? One person, 2 people read it, 3 people? Okay. Any thoughts on whether we should do a working group last call? Do you see any issues or things that are missing from the draft? I think we'll do a working group last call, and I think often we need to do a last call just to get people to read the draft, which is unfortunate, but I think we'll do that. And if you find any issues during the last call, of course we will work on those. And we also need people to voice their support, though. In working group last call, it's not enough to not hear any comments from people. All right, we'll do a working group last call, and hopefully some of you people will help us out, read the draft, and provide comments. All right, okay, thanks. So yeah, we'll do a last call on the list.
Okay.
Let's see, and then we got one more draft. Let's see if I can find the slides. There, you can use this one to navigate.
Okay. Yeah. This draft talks about how to distribute the user-configured SSM ranges in an L2 network. So this is necessary because in order to have consistent SSM operation, so the *G v2 or v3 joins for the SSM range need to be discarded by the routers and the switches. So if it doesn't discard, those groups starts operating in v2 compatible mode. So what happens is, if you get a leave for those groups, and the router may send a v2 query to the host, so the SSM host. So the SSM host will think that the router is operating in a v2 mode, and it will downgrade itself to the v2 operation. So the SSM host will fail. So they no longer send the v3 joins. So the draft proposes to distribute the SSM ranges in a PIM hello option, so that the L2 switches can learn about this user-configured SSM ranges and drop the reports for the v2 groups. So this will ensure like this is consistent in the network, and also it is dynamic. So you no need of like user going and configuring a CLI on every L2 box. Yeah, so that's the draft. So any comments on it?
So is this implying that the SSM range is
Name,
modified?
please.
Oh, Lenny, Giuliano, Juniper. Is this assuming that the SSM range has been configured for something other than 232/8?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the draft allows it to be user configured for V2.
How widely deployed is people configuring a different range other than 232/8?
I've seen few customers doing it, but I don't know exactly like what is how many customers do it.
For the customers who do it, would this be applicable? Meaning, are they doing it for strange, odd reasons that they might not have actual end users running IGMP that would be DOSing each other because they have different SSM ranges? Or is that too difficult to speculate?
I don't know about that. Like, so most of the users use the 232 range, but there is a possibility of customers using 230 the user configured range over the network. When you can specify in the host stack as well. So they want to use this SSM range. So I've seen few customers using it, and I've seen one of the customer running into this problem where the SSM hosts were stopped working after it.
Niels, speaking for Deutsche Telekom. Lenny, to your question, there's actually a good reason for using a different range than SSM 232 range, which is due to a strange behavior in the Linux kernel. So if you have a device on your home network which sends out an IGMP version 2 message, and you have an IGMP version 3 SSM device also on there, it falls back sometimes to IGMP version 3 with ASM, so with star comma G. At least we have the situation.
Even in 232, it does.
Yes, and that's in 232. And as long as it is in 232, your home gateway will discard the packet. And if you move the range outside of 232, you don't have that issue anymore because the home gateway says, this is not an SSM range, so that's fine.
Thomas Eckert.
I think that there is a good reason why we have administrative scope multicast and company video announcement where the boss tells all the secrets only to the employees, right? So I don't want to have SSM not be able to do that. I know we should all stop using IPv4 completely and go to v6 where the problem is solved because we have all the administrative scopes. But for the few billions of us left that operate on v4 addresses, at least Cisco has been given out 239.232 as a recommendation to configure forever. I've seen a lot of networks that just have also layer 2 only, that don't even have layer 3. Large switch networks, right? 3 tiers, broadband aggregation networks, you may not even have a PIM router. So I'd strongly suggest to figure out if you cannot also do that as an IGMP extension.
Yeah, so the draft mentions that part as well, to have an IGMP message to distribute this ranges from the query.
Yeah, if that would have been clear in the title or so, I hope I didn't overlook it in what you said, but if there's an option to have it in a pure layer 2, whatever, hello option or whatever, it goes in an IGMP packet. I haven't thought what's the best place, but if we have a solution that works without PIM, then I think it's good.
Yeah.
So I'm a co-author of the draft, so speaking as an author. I believe there are people doing SSM inside 239 because they want to do scoped SSM or that it's not leaking outside their domain, which is pretty much what Torles said. I wonder a bit if it would be useful in maybe MBOND, I don't know, to have some draft on like operational issues with SSM, deploying SSM, and at least this I don't know, but at least this fallback is one of those issues. And one problem I've seen is in the IGMP spec, it says you should fall back to star G. But then you have this SSM draft that says you must not or should not fall back. But if you have implemented the IGMP draft and not sort of the SSM draft, you might claim you are compliant.
This is as simple enough as it. I mean, sure, present in MBOND, but I just have this as a document in PIM. Go forward, finish
Sure.
it. And
No,
be done.
regardless of this document, I wonder if it would be helpful to discuss operational issues in MBOND.
Oh, we can discuss then. All I'm saying is that this is 2 or 3 paragraphs to explain the examples. This can all be in one document.
Yeah.
Take off load from the IETF, just have a single document that also has a paragraph on the operational reason why we need this, right? So I think we've often enough run into, legacy receivers that are just sending the group address, and then basically all the SSM receivers are screwed. Or no, all the receivers are screwed because you needed to have the source address to be handed up, whether it's being handed up by a proxying router or a IGMP proxy or by a PIM router. So I think it's not too difficult to describe the operational things also in the protocol spec.
Right. Okay. Yep. How many people read this draft? 3 people. Yeah, so I think it's a bit too early to do an adoption call today. Usually we need a couple of IETFs more or less, or at least one IETF for people to read the drafts.
And for this work.
Okay, so we have one person supporting it. I would say please read the draft. Please comment on the list if you have any questions. And as one of the authors, we authors can also try to start a thread on a mailing list and get some input. Then hopefully by next IETF, several people will be familiar with this and we can see how to proceed. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Mike, you're on next, if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you see
All
me?
right.
You can probably hear me and see me.
There you are. Yeah, let me just get the slides. All right, you're good to go.
Okay. So this draft is something that Hao-Yu and I put together to specify requirements of on-path telemetry for multicast traffic. There are a few telemetry solutions out there, such as OAM and PBT, that are being worked on in the IPPM working group. And we see that seems to be a lacking of support for multicast traffic in that kind of an environment. So we put this together. We are presenting it here just kind of to socialize it. And next IETF, we will likely ask for time, which is limited in the IPPM working group. But being that this group is multicast experts, and maybe you have already thought about this, and maybe you have some solutions. I know Greg Mirsky and others are involved in IPPM work, so maybe this is something that's been discussed. And also part of the background is we present a few potential solutions to have multicast supported in these telemetry solutions. And maybe what we need to do, and this is another reason that I wanted to present here, is that if those that are interested, maybe we do need to spawn off a requirements draft before discussing some of these solutions. So we do have, of course, existing OAM techniques that are out there, mtrace, etc. Those of you that are familiar with some of the on-path telemetry techniques, they are promising, they are progressing, and there are some implementations out there. Greg, I see you lined up. Go ahead.
Okay. It's great that you decided to look at this, and I'll be very much interested to work together. I can point to the document that is in the beer working group on applicability of alternate marking method. It's RFC 8321 to beer, because alternate marking method can be not only in point-to-point packet loss and delay measurement, but in point-to-multipoint. The authors working on multipoint draft, basically, which is a 2MP scenario, 2MP to P to 2MP to MP. But RFC 8321 is applicable, and we have a document in beer which explains how it's used and what it gives. So we can definitely look in more generic scenario how it can be done in general multicast.
Okay, thank you. And we do reference your document, your OAM document that's in beer. We reference that in this draft. Okay, yeah. So the current on-path telemetry techniques do have some flaws, at least for multicast. With IOAM, every packet carries the entire trace data, so there's a lot of data redundancy. And with PBT, postcard-based trees, there's no branch identifier, so you can't correlate the postcards. And so we're trying to produce a solution that addresses these issues. Greg.
Thank you. Okay, I missed this draft. I would have read, and probably my comments would be of high quality. I can point to another draft, individual draft that exists in IPPM working group. It's called hybrid two-step method. What hybrid two-step does is it uses a trigger to do measurement, and then measurement packets are transported as a follow-up packet collecting measurements because they share the same encapsulation as the packet that triggered the measurement. So that might be interesting. I haven't actually, I admit, I haven't thought about using this method and what it will result for the multicast, but it will be very interesting to discuss that too.
Thank you.
So it's hybrid two-step.
Okay, I'll reach out to you after this, and let's maybe we can collaborate further. Next slide, Stig.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
thank summary you. Here.
Yeah, so, and there's only one more slide after this. So there are two solutions. There's a per hop postcard, which is an enhancement to the original PBT scheme. And then there's a per section postcard, which is an enhancement to the IOAM scheme, which is pretty popular. For the per hop postcard idea, each branch adds a branch identifier to the instruction header. And so you have a postcard with a branch identifier there in brackets, and then the telemetry data is in the squiggly brackets. And that data is being sent up at each branch node. Next slide.
Yeah, okay, example.
Yeah. Perfect. And then, so there's a per section postcard example as well. And another proposed solution is that a section is the path between two adjacent branch nodes, or between a branch node and its leaf node. And then a postcard is sent at each section's end node, and that postcard contains data for the entire section. And these postcards for a packet can be stitched together. There's no need to modify any IOAM header format. We just need to refresh the header at each section head and send that information up to a telemetry collector. So these are, again, details that can be hashed out more in the IPPM working group. If you go to the next slide, the last slide. Yeah, so this is really the only thing that we're asking is just to review this. You're welcome to contribute. I already know one, Greg, that I'm going to reach out to discuss this further. And we're not going to be asking anything of PIM, and this will not be a document that's worked on in PIM. Any further comments or questions? If not, thank you.
Yeah. So I read this myself, by the way. And so the main reason for the postcards is basically so you don't need to send any additional data in the data packet downstream, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. I'm gonna read it myself again. But,
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're well ahead of schedule here. So next presentation on MFR. Maybe I'll remind people already now that there's also MBOND meeting in this room afterwards. So you should, no, please come up. But yeah, just a reminder that MBOND session is in this room later. So I hope you all will stay for that. Yeah, let's see.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Jiron from Huawei. I'm presenting MOFR based on TI-LFA. Here is some background. LFA introduced by Unicast is based on the algorithm that a packet can be sent to its directly collected label, and the packet won't go back to the router itself. So in this triangle topology, R4 send a packet to R3 and target R2. It can ensure that R3 won't go back to R4. So Multicast can also use this feature. It is described in the RFC 7431. And then Unicast has advanced the LFA to remote LFA. The left picture describes the RFA. Note the cost in each link is will cause that the direct label of R5 cannot ensure the loop free. For example, R5 send the packet to R4 and target R2. Then the packet will go back to R5. So in this example, the RFA algorithm will have to calculate a remote point, R3. So R5 send to R3 and target R2. Then it won't go loop. And then in the segment routing, it introduced the TI-LFA. This is an example topology. From R6 to R2, there is an obviously a link, directly connected link. How can we find a backup path? Here, we can send the packet to R4 and then to R3 and force this packet from R4 to R3, and then R3 won't then no back won't happen. So that's the advance of LFA, and we can now see what's the problem with MOFR. here, as just introduced, R6 can have a backup path through R4 and R3, and this can be done in unicast by explicit repair list R4 and interface 1 to interface 2, and then target R2. But the problem is that, sorry, I missed some background in the MOFR. There is a PIM vector attribute can carry in the explicit point that a PIM join can go through. So in this example, R6 can add a vector attribute of R4 and R3 and tend to establish the backup path. But here, the problem is that when even between R4 and R3, the R4, if just include the load ID, R4 can't send the PIM join to R3 because R4, though R3 is a directly corrected label, but for R4, it is not the RPF path. So the solution we propose is that we add a PIM vector, pointed out the interface from interface 1 to interface 2. And then the R4 gets this vector and can know that it don't need to send the PIM join across the shortest path, but through the vector carrying in the packet. So this is our proposed extension to PIM RPF vector. Currently, attribute type 0 and attribute type 4 is defined as the PIM vector used in our presentation. We propose a new PIM vector attribute to the F bit will be 0. The E bit will indicates the last join attribute. The value is the unicast address of the directly collected label, and the type tells the router not to use the normal RPF interface, but use the interface indicated by this vector. This function can also be used in MLDP, but today I will not cover MLDP. So that's the introduction of this idea. Any comments?
I have one comment. So for this extension, you specify your own interface address and the neighbor's address to uniquely identify this segment.
Right.
There is an existing RFC for route and interface identifier, PIM hello option, that can be used to also uniquely identify an interface on a router. So I wonder if maybe that could be helpful. It's a little hard to explain here, but basically the way that Hello option works is that a router can announce, say, a loopback address or something, plus also a unique ID for each of its interfaces. So for a given router, on each of your interfaces where you send a PIM hello, you will announce a different identifier. But yeah, I don't know if it helps or not, but at least I suggest just thinking about it. I can send you an email with the RFC number.
Sure, thank you, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, let's see. Maybe one comment.
Rishabh Parekh, Cisco. So there's already RFC for an explicit RPF vector in PIM. Did you consider extending that?
Sorry.
No, there is an existing RFC that defines the explicit RPF vector in PIM joint group messages. Did you consider extending that before doing this format?
Sorry, can you take this to the list? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so encourage people to please read the draft and comment on the mailing lists. Okay, great. Okay, then we have one last presentation on IGMP MLD evolution. Let's see. Oh, it's this one, of course.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Olufemi Komolafe, or Femi Komolafe, and I work for Aristar Networks. And there are a bunch of us working together on this work, and nobody volunteered to give the talk, so you've got me, basically. Yeah. So basically, to set some background, so the idea is Stig sent an email to the list, I guess, a few months ago, saying that the working group wants to move IGMPv3 and MLDV2 to full standards and looking for some volunteers to kind of help with this work. So the idea is before we can do that, we need to follow the IETF process, and two big things we have to try to do. One is to determine what features in the RFCs are not widely used. Okay. And then also to figure out if there are any kind of interrupt issues that have arisen from these two protocols. And the idea is that the answer to these questions would kind of inform how the working group, what the working group does going forward. So how should we answer these questions? Well, there was a similar process carried out for sparse mode a while back. So the suggestion from the chairs was to use that approach, which is basically to do a survey of the community. So survey vendors and operators and ask them questions to help us try to answer these two big questions. So there's a team assembled, and the authors are kind of listed at the start. We've been kind of having regular meetings, I guess, over the few months, and we've created a draft of the survey, which is listed there. And so that's the kind of background. So the survey, like I was saying, is going to be targeted at operators and vendors. And also because IGMP, because of the nature of the protocol, we also have to maybe try to get some host implementers to kind of help answer the questions. Like I said, the questions are in the draft. It'll be really good to have a look at that, to have some kind of feedback from you guys. And then the results will be kept confidential. So we'll just do exact same process like was done for PIM sparse mode. Okay? So next steps, please review the questions. I've said that third time. And also, perhaps there's one kind of open issue that we've not quite resolved, and is what to do about features. Okay, so should we list features at all, or should we list features only in the RFCs? Okay, because the idea is if you ask people, tell me some IGMP v3 features that you use, they may actually say some features that are not in the RFC. So how should we kind of resolve that? So that's maybe one thing that we're kind of looking for some input about. So we can discuss that here on the list. And once things are finished and the kind of working group chairs are kind of happy with it, it'll be useful to try to get it distributed as widely as possible. So that's...
So IGMP and IGMP v3 and MLD v2 have lots of stuff in them, and a lot of stuff that nobody ever implemented or used. Lightweight IGMP v3 and MLD v2 was a spec that was written kind of as a response to that. What if we discover that lightweight IGMP and MLD is more accurate? Is a more accurate state of deployment? Could that become the new internet standard, or?
Possible. I guess the first thing is just to get the data first, and then we can then decide what to do with it.
Thomas Eckerts, yes. When we started out, there were questions, and I haven't been able to catch up with the latest state of this for the last 2 months. And I'm kind of thinking that, at some point in time, my function of is something ripe enough or not is also there is a time factor. So at some point in time, I'm just saying go forward and let's distribute it. But I'll certainly do another run through it. Yeah, that was also when we started this, one of the interesting questions. And that's why there was specifically the question there about exclude mode, membership reports, if anybody using them, even at the risk that a good population will ask, what is this? Which typically would mean no. So exactly to figure out if we could reduce ourselves to the lightweight model as the future standard, at least from the requirements perspective, right? So I think there is this other round that we need to do, which is, do we really feel very safe that there is no interoperability issue? Right, because I think my perception would be nobody needs full IGMP v3, but nobody really has widely deployed pure limited IGMP v3 constrained implementations. So just because they would work doesn't mean that the protocol, the way it's specified, because I think we waved it through very quickly, right? When we did that protocol, I was standing up, the lightweight, yeah. So when I was standing up and saying, hey, I'm representing one of those vendors that have implemented all the old crap that I know we didn't need, but and now basically you're challenging me with me having to figure out if this is interoperable, right? But yeah, I don't think more is required. That's what we're going to figure out. Whether it means it's good enough to also feel safe that we only mandate that specification or rev it, and that's another step we can take afterwards.
And I think that's a question directly. I think in the draft we also call out, IGMP v3, v2, lightweight. We ask a question to say what flavor are you actually running.
Right. Yeah, I just say this because I think there would be a lot of value in getting rid of all the crap that was in there that we didn't need, because it can make future implementations a lot easier to do. And it would be great to get rid of things like exclude mode. And this is kind of hitting home because, I'm working with somebody who ended up having to write an IGMP implementation for VLC to get AMT gateway into VLC. And, that was part of it was, what is this exclude mode crap? Do I have to do this? And it would be really good to give guidance, especially to people outside of this room, what actually is needed. So I think this is good work. And I would say, sure. But to the team working on this, I would say, be brutal and cut, don't be afraid to cut things.
No, I mean, here it's just what question we need. So basically, if we cut out questions that allow us to conclude that we don't need exclude mode, I think we're doing a bad job, because then we can't come to the conclusion, right? So, and the question, if you find a way to make the question of whether we need exclude mode or not in a way that most people in the world understand it, please, right? Because, I mean, we just put in, do you use exclude mode? Yes, I know a lot of people won't understand it, but what's the best question how we can come to the conclusion that I think you and I want? So please review the question, say that let's get it out, that it has all the important things you think need to be in there. And cutting down the software afterwards, that's after we get the feedback. That's, yeah.
So
Although, framing-
is just the survey. This is step one. Okay. Gotcha.
Although framing the question to get an answer that you want seems a bit controversial.
Actually, that's
I'm
the whole
just
point of a
joking.
survey. Is you frame things in the way that you get the answer that you want.
I'm just joking. That was just a joke. It's okay.
No. That doesn't mean that we're not trying to do an honest job of representing really what the community is telling us back, right? So even if we don't
Yeah.
like the answer.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, so the way I see it is, the RFC might have multiple features. Exclude mode is just one of them. And there might be many small details like fallback, unicast messages, or other things. And every one of those different things, we should ideally get some input whether people are using them or not. And then we can decide later, based on what we get, can this be removed from the spec, or should it stay, and so on. But right now, it's just about asking the right questions.
Hi, Alora Tana, FutureWay. I have a question. I'm not an implementer. I have a question about adding stuff. So you're asking there if you... Okay. You're asking there if you should inquire about only things that are defined in RFCs or other stuff. How much other stuff is out there? Is there a lot of things that people have implemented that are not really documented, that you might come back and say, look at this, 90% of the people reply that they do snooping proxy.
Okay, but so snooping proxy example is not in the RFC.
Correct.
So if the goal is to say we want to take the RFC and you want to kind of distill it down, should you then include things that are not in that RFC?
Well,
It's an open.
right. So I'm concerned about the other way, which is if there are many features out in the field that are not documented, I'm assuming that one of the reasons to ask maybe to document them at some point.
So in the survey we've got a couple of open-ended questions that may get to that, but if there's a specific question that you think we should add it to it. So we do have a couple of questions saying, what do you like, what do you not like about the protocol, what some of the challenges, but we could add a question to that saying, are there features that you don't use, or in many ways, if we have a what we think is a definitive list of all the possible features, whether or not they're in the RFC, and we could put them in the survey, then we could.
But because what I'm thinking is that if there are other features that are not defined in RFCs, maybe that means work for the working group, right? On one hand. On the other hand, maybe, and this is just a maybe, what the team needs to consider is whether the specification is actually complete, or if there are other features that need to go in there. Now, if you decide that, if we even get to that point, we're going to need to balance the internet standard versus adding functionality.
Right. So if I understand correctly, for it to become internet standard, we can't add any new stuff, right? All we can do is take stuff away, clarify things, and.
So I don't remember exactly the text, but I'm assuming that it says something like it can't have too many changes.
Okay.
Which probably means that it's safe to take stuff away, but it probably depends on what you take away. But I don't know. I mean, it would be hard to say if you take half the RFC away, is that okay, right?
Yeah.
So in the same way, if you add something that now is something that is actually used, then it might be okay as well.
I guess the main thing is whatever we add needs to be very mature, right? Something that has been widely used, widely implemented, and so on.
Right. I mean, right now, I guess we're just assuming things, but when we get there, we're going to have to think about those questions.
Yeah, but the point is, I guess, is it useful for us to find out about additional stuff? Does it make the survey better or more confusing, or is it good info for us to have?
I think it would be good.
Yeah.
Well, my thought process was framing the initial question. So reverse engineering, what is the output for the progression of the standards that we can do, right? So And that's when basically your points came in the first round of review, right? What is the input that we need to elevate IGMP v3 to a full standard or IGMP v3 Lite? What questions do we need to distinguish which of the two could be elevated to that, right? And so all the stuff like what would be other cool stuff to make people more happy would be certainly on a degree lower, because it wouldn't help us to elevate to fuller standards, something else than IGMP v1 that we have. So that's still kind of the most limited scope. And you know, if we manage after 10 years to have one questionnaire out, maybe we have in 1 or 2 years another questionnaire out for cool additional stuff. But, and maybe we should track it right now, right? I mean, if people have these interesting questions and we just feel that they're just, you know, scope low, we will just track them otherwise.
Right. So, so I think we want to send out this survey fairly soon. So it would be great if people can review the questions, and we can't, it's a lot of work to get this survey out to people and get their responses. So we should make sure that we ask the right questions before we do it, but we also want to move on with this.
Yeah, and I think one of the key questions to the community here in the room and the mailing list is, whom else could we send it out to, right? I think we have a couple of usual suspects, like, you know, Internet 2 mailing list in the US, some mailing list people know equivalent in the research space in Europe, maybe accelerators, people that work with a lot of customers. So anybody who has an idea on whom to send it to, please do it by yourself. And if you don't want to do it by yourself, give the suggestion whom to send it to, and it will repeat the question on the list of questions.
Right, so basically we'll have, I'm not sure exactly how we plan to do it, if it will be like a PDF or some document or a URL somewhere. But we want to help, I mean, we want everyone to contribute to distributing this. It's hard to reach out to all the customers, enterprises, and so on. So we basically want everyone who knows someone to just spread this as widely as possible. But yeah, I'm wondering a little bit how we will send it out. I mean, would it just be like forwarding an email with some attachments or pointing to a web page somewhere, or?
So how was it done when this guy, Mr. Venus, was doing it for PIM?
Right. Yeah, I can try to figure out what we did.
Well, what you were just mentioning in terms of having it on a web page, obviously, you know, allows people to go back later on and, you know, potentially we can have an update or a status report or something, right? Whoever kind of gets involved in the process has a more direct point to go to. And so that even if you haven't done it in PIM, it might be a good idea to basically point to a URL.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the reason I'm saying it is we want people to, you know, forward emails and so on, forward their requests, but attachments might get lost in the process or something.
So I was involved in the exact same process when we did the PIM, you know, to Internet standard. And as far as, and so was Jeffrey, as far as I remember, we created a Survey Monkey or something like that survey, and then sent out the link, obviously to the participants. So, and then somebody was responsible for collecting the data and then anonymizing it and so forth. So that was, I think that was the option we used.
Right. Yeah, and the same person that collected those responses and anonymized them last time is also volunteering to do it this time. So.
Right, but did Tim then do all the job to set up the Survey Monkey?
I think the team did it. I think he just had an account or whatever, could collect the results. That's my understanding.
Okay.
But yeah, great if you can actually discuss with Rishabh and Jeffrey here. And but yeah, what we're asking from you guys now, I would say, is please review the questions, and if you have any questions to add, if you find some questions confusing or that they could be improved or whatever, we need all the input we can get to make them the best possible. And then I think hopefully sometime before the next IETF, we want to send this out, and we would then like you all to help us distribute this. Yeah, does that sound reasonable?
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah. All right. Okay, I think we're done then. So yeah, we finished a bit early here. for a change. Thanks to everyone. So in about an hour, is it an hour? I think so. At least the next session is M-Bound D in the same room. So please come back for more multicasts. All right, thanks, Mike, if you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks a lot, Stig. See ya.
Yeah, all right, thank you, bye. Yeah, this is good if you guys actually talk together a little bit about how you it's so long. Yeah, that's what I do. But I really that pretty much obviously there's like researching the question not all. Well, you notice that I have the draft review it up. I have a reference to the draft. So I guess what I noted there, I guess the draft is an issue. I will suggest move on to because that's following the procedures of reading. And these procedures have to be. I feel like that's because that's